Overwatch players are some of the craziest individuals to ever live, and that trickles into the teams they play for. From a man being so hateful that he ruined the entire league for years, to an organization so bad they dropped their entire roster 4 separate times, to an organizational dictator who ruined her team to support fascism in Korea, there is truly no hope for the Overwatch world. The first team in today's video was once the best team in the Overwatch League. In 2018, the last unsigned Korean team from the pre-Overwatch League era, Runaway, was spotted at a Canadian airport after a new expansion was rumored to be based there, and on December 1st, the Vancouver Titans were announced, signing what was at that point the best roster available by far. The Runaway guys have been together forever, with Bumper, Stitch, Haxel, and Janu having played together since 2016. They were incredibly successful, winning Korean Contenders once and coming second in Apex, basically the Seoul Dynasty and London Spitfire. Things looked incredibly promising from the get-go, as there was no need to build synergy amongst guys that had already played together, and Runaway's players' decision to wait to join Overwatch League until they could be picked up as a full team looked to be a great idea, as they started their existence going undefeated and winning the first stage of Season 2. It didn't come easy though, as the upstart Titans would take part in the most legendary match in Overwatch League history. On March 10th, 2019, they matched up against the strangest team in the league, the Chengdu Hunters. During the GOATS meta, these guys only played Wrecking Ball, because their real main tank player was swimming across the ocean to Los Angeles. Beating them shouldn't have been a problem because their team was the best and their main tank player Bumper was exceptional. In this match though, he demonstrated that he was just a gold player with really good mechanics, and he got absolutely worked by the Yada Chad Eamon, who switched to Ryan randomly and looked like the greatest player to ever open the video game. Here is Avast to describe Eamon's incredible transformation.
It's disgusting, man. It was disgusting. I've never seen a player literally move to the next Pokemon evolution, like where he's stuck in, he literally has a single, like he only has a certain moveset. He's Orisa, Hammond. That's his moveset. That's all he's got. And then they fucking hit him with the rare candies. You see it fucking glow for a bit. It pops out. It's emongg. 2nd generation. He can play Reinhardt now.
That day, all that was heard from Bumper as he returned to the green room was, "He got me." That Eamon boomed me. The Titans did get the last laugh, however, not only winning the match, but finishing with the best record in the league that season, thanks in large part to the increased role of Bumper. He could really do it all, as he was even seen on Hanzo, where he actually played pretty well. They did not win Stage 2, however, as they participated in another one of the most legendary matches, where they narrowly lost to the San Francisco Shock, which bolstered the rivalry between them that would carry on to the grand finals in the beautiful city of Philadelphia. Unfortunately for the then main character of the Overwatch League, Bumper, the meta had shifted away from GOATS to double shield, and his skill set, which was mostly just pinning on Reinhardt, was rendered useless, and the Titans played Tizzy on tank instead. He got completely liquefied en route to the Titans losing the championship. At that point, things still looked good. They had basically all the best players, and all of them still wanted to play together, so contracts weren't really a problem. But that was the best things ever got for the organization. The following offseason saw Bumper and Hureg leave the team, which was particularly sad because Bumper never played a match with a team that wasn't Runaway or the Titans in his multi-year career. While that was sad for fans, the real problems came when Harsha left. From the Titans' inception, he served as a bridge between the players and the organization. He knew how important it was for them to stick together, and he also helped them adjust to living on the opposite side of the world. Titans never hired another Harsha-like figure, and that came back to bite them multiple times in the coming seasons. The Titans did, however, acquire Fissure, who was coming off a hiatus, and Ryo Jae-hong, who was already washed by this point, but could still be alright when he wanted to be. The league was to function differently this season, with teams playing homesteads in their respective cities and traveling all around the world to play each other. The problem is, none of the players on the Vancouver Titans were from Vancouver, or even the United States, and now without a figure to bridge the gap between the cultures, they were basically left out to dry by the organization, with a rough practice schedule that left players feeling even more alienated. Overwatch-wise, they got off to a good start, continuing their winning trend, but when COVID came around, things changed. The players banded together and requested to return to Korea to play, because they wanted to be at home during a very difficult time. The organization obliged and the players left, but the funding did not go with them. The Titans did literally nothing to accommodate the players, not paying for flights, apartments, or even the computers that they literally used to play the game. There were also big issues with contract negotiations, as the Runaway core took less money to stay together, but the big free agent signings and Fissure and Jae-hong took higher salaries, causing the players to organize a strike against practicing. Even if the players wanted to strike though, there was no way for them to really communicate their issues with the owner, as the team did not even hire a translator. That's right, a Canadian organization with an entirely Korean team did not hire a Korean translator. Any content pieces they made for English audiences had translations done by a freelancer, like from Fiverr. This would all lead to players leaving the team. The first would be Janu, who was the quietest player by far. When he left though, even he tweeted out, "I'm free." All other Korean players would subsequently be dropped on May 6th, which was incredibly inconvenient considering they had a match scheduled for May 9th. Before that though, there was even more contract drama. I covered this in another video, but the Titans organization organized buyouts with all the players, except for Fissure, who wanted to stay with the team because he knew this was his last real shot. That ended up in the organization basically giving him a middle finger and claiming that he breached the contract, ending with him receiving no money at all. He literally lost money on this contract because he moved all the way across the world and paid for his own ticket to fly back before he was released. In classic Overwatch organization fashion, they missed a bunch of payments along the way as well, but that's okay because they had this state-of-the-art practice facility in Vancouver. This was a state-of-the-art practice facility that caused financial problems and led to the downfall of the most popular team in Overwatch history. 4 walls and 6 computers. Fantastic. Of course, this was a massive stab in the back to all the players on the team, but specifically Jaehong said he turned down a bunch of offers to play for a contending team instead. Imagine how much money Hoxel or Slime could have been offered, as they were legitimately the best players in their role. That was the least of the team's concerns though, as they had a match tomorrow, and 0 players to play in it. On May 8th, they clutched up, signing a decent selection of Western players, including Florida Mayhem legend Sauna. Unfortunately, they sucked really bad, finishing the season 6-15, good for 18th place, and the Mercenaries were dropped as soon as they came in, getting replaced by the next batch of Western talent, including actual good players like Linkser and Fried Wiener, who was pretty funny. These signings of cheaper talent led fans to wonder if the Vancouver Titans were living off of food stamps. They still sucked, obviously. The Western main tank player they brought in retired mid-season with no warning, and the Korean one they brought in, Chang Sicko Mode, also sucked, causing them to go 1-15 on the season, for 19th place. 2 years ago, this was the best team ever created. Something funny did happen at last, as the Titans had a partnership with Pizza Hut that promised free breadsticks whenever the Titans won a match. They literally almost never won, so it eventually became breadstick bingo, with fans eventually, after weeks of suffering, being blessed with free breadsticks. I would recommend you read this article about it, but .esports is the worst website I've ever used in my life, so maybe not. If at third you don't succeed, try again. And they brought back Shockwave, who was here for some reason, dragged Moss's corpse out of retirement to play Lucio again, and finally signed another Korean player. They still sucked, brought on some new players, continued to suck, brought in famous shoulder checker Deepay, still sucked, and finished another season at the bottom of the standings at 5-19, which is notable for not being last place. This season though, they were blessed with having Aspire on their team. Fortunately, he was a really good player. Unfortunately, he was dating a 16-year-old, and he was dropped extremely swiftly by the organization. In 2023, they had Sugar Free. He was really good. He and Heesang would lead the team to finally finish a season on a good note at 8-8. A far cry from where they once were, but considering how bad things got, this ending is actually pretty good for them. And at last, when the league shut down, they got to do their favorite thing one more time. Let go of their entire roster. Overall, the Titans went out sad. Not much I can even say. The next team also had probably the most hyped up roster before the Overwatch League began. Picking up the best Western team, the Dallas Fuel were supposed to be one of the 2 best teams in the world when the league began. Envious was fresh off an NA Contenders win after signing the most aura-filled man in Overwatch, Seagull. When they were signed to the Fuel, they got even better, adding XQC, who wasn't a famous streamer yet, and Custa, who was still Australian. They were promised to win a championship. They were just that good. Well, things actually started up really rough for the Fuel, which immediately caused people to look for someone to blame. The first scapegoat was karq, the head coach. He did make some questionable roster decisions, but the reason he was put in that position in the first place was because of the players. As many of you already know, XQC was a problem in the Overwatch League. His streaming career had already started taking off as the league began. He was known to pull 18-hour days, scrimming all day, and then streaming after for like 6 or 8 hours. And as he got more famous, the magnification of his activities intensified. His first suspension came from a homophobic comment he made towards Muma in stage 1.
In the wise words of a good friend of mine, rolled and smoked my doggies.
I'll smoke you, dude. No, he didn't smoke. No, shut. I'm like, I'll go back there, suck a fat cock. I mean, he would like it, but.
So many games ahead.
He was suspended for the remainder of the stage after only playing 3 games. Muma later accepted his apology, and I think it's safe to say in retrospect, this was a pretty big overreaction from the league, even if XQC shouldn't have said that. His next suspension and fine came when he typed tryhard7 in the chat when Malik, a black host for the league, came onto the screen. XQC said to use that emote as a greeting to his fans, which is true, but it's also important to know that a lot of other viewers would spam the emote when he came onto the stream, not as a greeting. Regardless, it led to his suspension and ultimate release from the team, which he was not told about by the organization, instead learning from an article that he read on stream.
You have to announce the release of Felix XC Langel, boys.
Like more than
Or
a year
Langel,
ago, I
which is
first saw
name
you
in French.
super hyped and passionate in the
Immediate
game on
release.
Sturz.
This was a blessing in disguise, as he went on to become the most famous streamer in the world and make more money than LeBron James, so don't feel too bad for him. If you want to make more money than LeBron James, make sure you like this video and subscribe to see more amazing Overwatch content. If you want to support me extra, click the join button where you can give me money for a badge next to your name. Isn't that cool? Anyway, how crazy is it that his Twitter handle was Malik4play? The tank player that originally played with Team Envy, Coco, sucked, so he couldn't replace XQC, and their tank player they signed to replace him after had to serve a suspension for account boosting. That made karq substitute Taimu, the Widow player, onto Winston, where he was actually not that bad at first, but eventually he came back down to earth, and the team got even worse, with a second stage record of 2-8. At this point, karq actually started making bad decisions, with newly acquired roster pieces, Unko, AKM, and Rascal. He and Rascal reportedly never got along, with Rascal at some points refusing to play for the team even though he was by far their best player. This led to karq playing AKM on Genji, which we'll get to in a second, but that was just bad news for everyone involved. Unko was a good player, but one time he had an issue with his mouse that caused a pause so long that OGE fell asleep on stage. His longtime teammate from Rogue, AKM, was also a good player, don't get me wrong, but he was exclusively a hit scan player for his entire career, basically only playing Soldier. But with Rascal refusing to play and Seagull focusing on playing off tank, AKM was the only option to play Genji in a Genji meta. It was really rough for him, as he was playing against the best Genji players in the entire world, and he just got absolutely worked on the hero week in and week out. On one map, it took him so long to build his blade that he used it for exclusively the last fight that they lost anyway to get full health. It took him 3 minutes and 45 seconds to build the ultimate Dragon Blade. I'm pretty sure it takes 4 minutes to get it from passive generation. He was just walking around like a Sims character for an entire map of Overwatch. He was getting his cardio in with a ninja character. Poor guy. karq wasn't the only notable coach, as he also brought on the then streamer Jane, who had previously coached for an Australian contenders team and made a name for himself doing educational content. He is now most known for being the inventor of esports and creating the type of video where 5 bronze players play against 2 GMs. He disappeared randomly after the league's second season and keeps appearing and reappearing with different names. He posted on this YouTube channel 5 months ago if you want to check this out. He forever leaves behind the legacy of having the worst Zarya clip of all time.
I'm gonna flank through alley and then I'm gonna grab from behind in 3, 2. Oh, never mind.
Fair one. What the fuck, dude? Use your grab.
We already hit the
I'm
hammer.
holding it for next game, dude.
But in the third stage, the cracks became crevices and the team cratered, dropping to 1-9. At this point, the season was basically over. It was like watching Derrick Rose on the Grizzlies, where you just know it's never going to get better, but you can't help but root for him. Then somehow, at the last minute, when nothing mattered anymore, the Fuel had their best performance in the Overwatch League by far. Half of their wins from the season come from this fourth stage, where they improved to 6-4. This is largely because the most evil piece of shit character was added to the game right before the stage started. Brigitte changed Overwatch forever, and that's an understatement. She was by far the best hero in the game for like 2 years, and even the character they created to counter her was too weak for the absolute freak of beast Brig. She was so good that people were sending death threats to her voice actor for some reason. And yes, Baptiste was added to try to stop people from playing Brig so much. This character did the most healing in the game with unlimited range and could provide armor on way too short a cooldown, had an OP ult that made her unkillable, and had a 150 damage burst every 6 seconds and could literally fly. What the hell? The first person to really take advantage of her was surprisingly Mickey from the Dallas Fuel. He took to the character like a fish in water, and with OGE finally finding his footing with the team, they were a legitimate force to be reckoned with. This couple-week stretch of dominance probably made Mickey an extra $100,000 in his playing career, as he got 2 contract extensions despite not playing that much. He now spends that money being jacked and handsome and going on vacation in exotic places. I can't believe some of us have to go to college. The Fuel did not go on to win that stage, nor did they make the playoffs, so their season of disappointment was finally over. It was clear that many of their players had lost their fire for the game, and Chip Cyan, a support player who had been with Envy basically forever, was one of those. When he left the team, he tweeted this, saying that he would talk about everything later. But later never came. This was his last tweet ever. The Fuel were so bad, they caused the Swedish man to disappear. It's so weird how many Swedish men have disappeared because of Overwatch. The go to 2016 Seagull also retired, and they signed some pretty good players in the offseason, including RCK, who would later be included in another rare trade for Note. A lot of great players came and went through the doors of the Fuel over the years, including Decay, who was yet another victim of the drama, as he was benched at times and eventually dropped for not taking the game seriously, which I covered more in depth in another video. Makes you think if it was a problem with the organization or with the players, but ultimately, I don't know. They also participated in another trade, which I guess I should stop saying are rare, when they traded OGE to acquire Decay. To wrap up with the Season 1 roster, Unko and AKM eventually rode off into the sunset, but Harry Hook had one more in the chamber before he went down. He was dropped from the team after getting an extension, basically for calling a girl a whore. There is more to this story, but because the story is on the worst website ever, .esports, I cannot access it. But Harry Hook was dropped from the team for this incident, even though he was probably going to be done anyway. They later moved to Korea for the 2022 season, where they had their best roster yet, including 5 players who could be considered the greatest player of all time on their role. This was their best season in history, as they made it into the playoffs as the favorites, even over an extremely powerful Shock team, with League MVP Proper. This was the first final played in Overwatch 2, and Sojourn was a dominant character. Proper had been the best Sojourn all year, but when it mattered most, the longest tenured player on the Fuel, Edison, finally activated. He pulled a Gon and sacrificed all of his life energy for one final performance on Sojourn. He made the Shock look like a complete joke. I mean, he is John Sojourn, even Super knows it. He carried them to this win, but unfortunately for him, he is not the main character of the Overwatch League, and Fearless took home the Finals MVP award instead. But it didn't matter, because it was done. They did it. 3 trades, multiple disappearances, so many failed rosters, but they did it. In that moment, they stood at the precipice. They were the team that was promised. They looked different, they played on a different side of the world, hell, they even played a different game. But no one could take that from them. No matter how hard it got, they remembered their promise. The Fuel got their championship. The last team on the list could not have had a different trajectory from the Fuel. Their first year in operation wasn't great, but their second was one of the best runs in the history of the league. The Paris/Vegas Eternal were once a juggernaut of the scene, with literally all the good young Korean talent. Their franchise was created for the second season of the league, as the second European franchise, with hope of creating a European team that had actual European players, unlike the London Spitfire. They signed probably the best roster of European players they could have got, with a healthy amount of Rogue Boys and Soon and Nico, legendary Genji player Shadowburn, and arguably the most handsome man to ever play Overwatch, Ben Best. Cruz was another addition on the team, who was literally moving like King Vaughn on Genji in the World Cup that one year, but he was a support player by this time in his career. They also brought on the accursed karq, who when dropped from a team puts at least a 1-year curse on them. As most teams that don't have any Korean players do, the Eternal really struggled. One reason for that was Valorant, where they lost 2 of their support players, but another reason was just that the players they signed weren't that good. Nico didn't look great, they really only had one option for off-tank, and of course they had karq coaching, so that certainly didn't make anything easier. But the way they retooled in the coming season was generational. The whole time the league had existed, there was something approaching. One Korean teenager's 18th birthday. Sparkle was by far the best prospecting contenders, maybe the best Overwatch League prospect ever. Whoever was able to land him was certain to have the best projectile DPS player in the league. I mean, this guy was that good. There were plenty of rich teams, and he was expected to go to Dallas or San Francisco, somewhere that was competitive. Somehow, someway, Sparkle chose to sign with the Paris Eternal. To this day, no one really knows why. Was Sparkle secretly a French national? No one knows for sure. But it was probably because it was the only team that offered to sign both him and Coach Rush, who had been with him from the jump. Along with him, his Element Mystic teammate Hanbin joined, and no one expected how good this guy was going to be. Xe also joined the team, and really no one had ever heard of him. But the run he went on for the start of the season was ridiculous, and because Sparkle wouldn't turn 18 until a bit into the season, they needed someone to carry them in the meantime. They signed another Korean player in Nosemite, but he was a tank player who was best known for playing Junkrat one time under Rado, so that pretty much says everything you need to know about his ability. The Eternal also signed one person who would end up becoming the entire organization, literally, Avala, who started as the assistant GM. The French were secretly the best team in the league talent-wise, and the only thing left was to go out and prove it. Strangely, this half French and Korean team worked out really well. Ben Best won his spot back from Nosemite, and soon FD God and Nico split time. Nico really stepped it up this year, and was a fantastic Mei, even sometimes playing over Sparkle after he turned 18. Soon was a perfect complement to Xe, who dominated on hit scan and allowed Soon to take over on Widow sometimes. Hanbin's fantastic off-tank play enabled the aggressive Ben Best to dominate, and just in case they weren't stacked enough, they signed Fielder in the middle of the season. And yes, he was already that good when he started playing. When Sparkle came of age, it was over for the league. The countdown was up, and it was time for him to prove he was worth the hype. They started to absolutely tear it up, leading to them qualifying for the Summer Showdown of 2020. No match was particularly close until they faced the legendary San Francisco Shock and won a nail-biting 3-2 series. But what would follow in the finals would become one of the best matches of Overwatch ever played. The Philly Fusion were tired of being number 2. These guys never came first in anything. This was their time to prove that they were stepping out of the shadow and taking over the league like they deserved. The Eternal won the first game, but the Fusion struck back with 2 wins of their own. They kept trading, and eventually the series was tied 3-3, with the final map being a Rialto. When it came down to it, it was overtime for the Fusion's attack, and it was only EQO left. He was a building block for the team. This was not only the Fusion's moment to prove themselves, it was his. What came next is the clutchest moment you will ever see in Overwatch.
Down the Fusion, only a couple of players left remaining. EQO's gonna come up huge right now. Everyone is weak. EQO with the blade, pulls it through, builds it up. Will it be enough? 1 kill, 2 kill. Are you kidding me? EQO now finds it with the third. And now it is overtime. Xe moving over to the Tracer to try and deny it, but EQO! What a player, what a star!
And what if I told you that after that, he was the reason the team went on to lose? That's right, they lost. The Eternal got first place in the Summer Showdown with one of their players on 200 ping. The whole time Fielder was playing from Korea. When they won, he sat there, emotionless, because it was 3 AM his time already. What a beast. While they had this hero run, eventually COVID happened, and the playoff format was really weird, causing the Eternal to barely miss out. This year was not a failure though. It was a step to success, surely. All they needed to do was bring back their roster and just watch the magic happen again. But lightning didn't strike twice for the Eternal. At the time, Blizzard and the Overwatch League were going through some tough times. This is when all the information about the sexual assault and breast milk stealing and drinking at the Blizzard offices was happening. Yes, that happened by the way. And that obviously turned sponsors off from paying the Overwatch League to promote them. The Eternal's owner was obviously a rich man. How much money can you burn before you get sick of it? It was mentioned that before the 2021 season, they had planned on bringing their roster back if the money from ads increased and they continued to get the same share. But because of the scandal, it didn't happen. The team also lost so many sponsors, including, but not limited to, all of them. The team was in limbo, and they lost everyone. Nico and Soon even offered to play for minimum contracts, but they weren't even offered, because it was somehow cheaper to buy out a contenders team outright. And so, that 1 year of brilliance is really the best we ever got to see from the Eternal. At this time, people praised the GM of the team, Avala, for making the best of a bad situation. And yes, she definitely did, with her signing a bunch of pretty decent players. They did alright considering what they were working with, and they finished 8-8 on the year. But this was about the time when the popular opinion on Avala started to change. The roster changed a few more times after that season, eventually ending up becoming ridiculously bad in the coming seasons, where they won a combined one game, including having a game where Avala herself had to sub in on support. Low-key, she wasn't even that bad. But a tweet from her former player Ben Best started to get people to revisit her past of being a GM. Ben said that all the failures of the team were karma for her lying to and talking trash about players. How does that make sense when she's such a good GM? Well, in an interview, it turned out she admitted that soon Nico and Ben Best were dropped because Avala thought they wouldn't be good without a gaming house. She was also the one that pushed for the team to move to Vegas, which French fans were not happy about, as it was also clear that she pushed out French players in favor of Korean ones. I mean, she also managed to win one game in 2 years, like, come on bro. It also came out around this time she had some rather controversial political beliefs. The candidate she supported and even donated money to was named Lee Myung-jae. He was a far-right politician in Korea whose policies sound like a 13-year-old on a Discord server made them up trying to be edgy. He ran on privatizing healthcare, abolishing gender equality and family ministry, and increasing the work week. Oh yeah, he also said that stopping people from sharing illicit videos of children might violate freedom of expression. He's the first politician to openly support the spreading of illicit material of children. At least he's honest. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but come on. By the end, public perception of her had soured drastically, and she is no longer active on social media. Back to the Overwatch side of things, the team was so bad in 2023, they lost to Samito and a team of streamers.
Does losing against Samito sting in particular, or is it just whatever?
Burns.
It doesn't sting. Samito's a good player. I don't know why people are hating on him. Samito's good. You know, he played in contenders. He played May.
He's better than Knuckle.
We still meme about it though. We obviously shouldn't lose to them. Their team was good there, so.
This is a $20+ million organization, by the way. They of course had Mothel during this time, the GOAT of OnlyFans, and racoon, who plays the bad character. And finally, the last great moment of the Eternal, the time Avala subbed into play. This was literally the best they looked all year, and not because of Avala, but because Mothel wasn't playing. He was the worst player to ever play in the Overwatch League, which I cover in another video, but his lowlights were just sad. Luke Mina was a legendary Hanzo player on ladder, and he did really good in that match, almost propelling them to a win, like, actually. Even during their winless season, the team started high and ended lower than any team ever could. The fall off is so sad because they were at one point the most exciting team in the league, and they ended up as an organization full of Andrew Tate grifters, alt-right members, and Knife, the Tracer player, who is the only good thing to ever come out of the Vegas Eternal. If you want to avoid a fall off like this in your life, remember to subscribe to me.